Hello and welcome to today's REF Town Hall on panel recruitment. I'll hand over to REF Director Rebecca Fairbairn.
Thank you very much, Sylvie, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to give you an overview of how to apply to be on a REF panel and what to expect if you do become a member. As Sylvie has introduced me, I am Rebecca Fairbairn. I am the REF 2029 Director, and I'm joined here today by Professor Simon Macklin, Chair of the REF People and Diversity Advisory Panel, and Professor Greg Walker, Chair of Main Panel D. We are really pleased to be able to share our insights with you today, and even more pleased that our session is being coordinated behind the scenes by Sylvie and Olivier from the REF team. We've already put them through their paces this morning. Please do add your questions to the question and answer function so that they can be grouped and responded to by Olivier and Sylvie in text and by Greg, Simon and me in real verbal life. Please note that we're just going to focus today on this topic, applying for the REF panel, rather than any other REF questions. And this talk is being recorded and will be posted on our website later today. So this is how today's session will run. We'll start by talking about what the panels are for, how they're recruited, and what it's like to be on a panel. Then we'll look at what we're looking for in panel members, before discussing what it takes to make a great application. We'll finish by taking your questions and asking what you'd like more information on. I'm going to keep sharing the question and answer function. We're really keen to get as many of your questions as possible so that we can answer these for you. I start every presentation on REF with an overview of what is the REF, so bear with me while I do this for you just now. The Research Excellence Framework is owned and led by the 4 UK higher education funding bodies. That's the Department for the Economy in Northern Ireland, MEDER in Wales, Research England in England, and the Scottish Funding Council in Scotland. REF informs the allocation of around £2 billion worth of block grant funding every year. It provides accountability for public investment in research, and it continually evolves alongside our research and our research base. We are in the process of evolution for this REF exercise now. On to the process for recruitment for panels for this REF exercise. Bit of a change for this exercise. Historically, REF panels were nominated by sector bodies, such as the National Academies or learned societies. Many sector bodies spent an awful lot of time and effort selecting candidates, but we were aware that other bodies would nominate anyone who approached them. Some bodies carefully considered the diversity of the nominations they provided, others did not. And this lack of consistency, coupled with the belief that there was a barrier to entry for applicants, so if you were not a member of a body, you couldn't be nominated, and then the burden of the process on the sector bodies has driven us to make a change for this exercise. We're building on the learnings from previous exercises, and we've shifted generally towards a broader and more holistic approach to research assessment. This includes moving to an open recruitment process, aiming to support more transparent and consistent processes and removing barriers to application for everyone across the sector. We're working with sector bodies to help us encourage applicants, to shortlist applications, and to make sure that we really do understand the key requirements for disciplines across the REF units of assessment. Recruitment will be based on excellent individual applications. There is no plan to exclude anyone. The shortlisting of sub-panel chairs has been, as far as possible, blind to institutions, and once we have a shortlist, we select the top candidate with consideration of the nation or region they're based in and their institution type. We always have a group of top candidates in case the picture across panels is too homogeneous, or in case candidates need to pull out. We are deeply aware of the instability in the sector just now, and we recognise that some candidates' ability to serve may change as time goes on. So on to the structure of the REF panels. submission to the REF are made to discipline-based units of assessment, or UOAs. In REF 2029, these will work much as they did in REF 2021, with 4 main panels that bring together clusters of 34 sub-panels, 1 sub-panel for each unit of assessment. We've recruited and announced the chairs of the 4 main panels, and recruitment has now closed for the chairs of the sub-panels. We're now recruiting for the members of these sub-panels, as well as people who will join the main panels with different types of expertise. Here's a diagram that shows how it all works. So the REF panels will be composed of leading experts in their respective disciplines and general areas and play a crucial role in the REF. They'll work with us, the REF team, the REF steering group, the main panel chairs and our advisory groups to establish the assessment criteria for the exercise and assess submissions against these criteria. Their assessments help us to inform that block grant research funding that goes out to HEIs based on the quality of research. It provides accountability for public investment in research and produce evidence of the benefits of that investment. And it provides insights into the health of the research that's happening in the UK's universities and higher education institutions. This slide shows the process for each of the main and sub-panel appointments. The key elements here are that 1, we're using open recruitment. Everyone is welcome to apply. There are standard and consistent processes across all sub-panels. That was point 2. Point 3, while we no longer are using nominations from the sector bodies, we really are working with the sector bodies in this process. Point 4 is that nobody is excluded from the process. We're working on the basis of your application forms, and we will take a view across all of the panels to ensure that diversity of institution types, nations and regions are considered in the shape of membership. I'm going to hand over to Greg now to outline what it's like to be on a panel, but I think I will continue as the glamorous slide changing assistant.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. I'm going to say next slide, please, I think. Yep. So as far as I don't yet know how many meetings there are going to be, but essentially we're trying to get back to a mix of face-to-face and virtual meetings. The last REF, for which I was a sub-panel chair, and I should say that my background is from English literature with a bit of history, so I really know those 2 panels best, and my experience to date has been with the English literature and language sub-panel. The last REF, of course, because of the pandemic and various shades of lockdown, was a virtually completely virtual experience, which had its problems. So we're moving back to something which is more face-to-face. The work falls into, am I doing the shape of the work at this point, Rebecca, or is that a later slide with even more exciting graphics? It's a later slide. Okay, so yeah, I mean there is a calibration phase. So people thinking, will I be simply thrown into the process unaided? There's a lot of calibration for sub-panels at the beginning where we look at various kinds of outputs, various kinds of impact case studies, and what would now be called PCE statements, I guess, to get a sense that we all share the same values and the same sense of what the various grades represent. So there's the calibration, calibration process, and then there's the actual assessment itself. And this is a substantial commitment. I mean, I shouldn't try and minimize that. It is a year of hard work, and it depends to some extent on which sub-panel you're going to be working in, what kind of work that is. But if, as with many of the main panel D sub-panels, you're working with a discipline where long form outputs are the norm or in the majority, then you are going to spend an awful lot of time reading and assessing things. It's not something you can do just at weekends or in the evenings. It's a big job. So whilst I'm probably not allowed to say this, I mean, I think it would be important if you talk to your heads of department, heads of college, whatever, to see what kind of allowance they will allow you to do this job, because I really don't think it's something you can do alongside a full teaching and workload. It says here 40 to 60 days. That's probably right for some subpanels, but for others, it's probably a lot more than that. We looked at something like, I think, 400 outputs each in the English subpanel last time, and given that a lot of them were novels or plays or monographs or large critical editions, that's not an inconsiderable amount of work. So I could happily say more about that in questions. And then my fourth bullet point here says that yes, there is roughly a third of the time spent for criteria setting when a smaller version of the subpanel gets together to go over what the appropriate rules and criteria are going to be to make the ref's general rules applicable to this particular discipline, and 2/3 for the assessment phase. I probably think it's more like a quarter, 3/4 for something like English, but it may well be different this time round, because a lot of the rules are, as I'm sure you've seen, changing this time round. So we are slightly moving into new territory, uncharted waters. So some of this is a guesstimate. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to talk to the top line here, which is largely the kind of process which Rebecca can speak to. But we have got the sort of two main phases with the submissions in between. If you look at the bottom line, the criteria setting phase, now I'm looking to Rebecca for nodding or shaking her head violently. The criteria setting is going to be later this year, I can say with some confidence. And then it probably will go a little bit quiet, although there'll be a lot of kind of off-book work, talking, I suspect, to learned societies, to groups, to try and reassure them about how the process is working and the kinds of things that we'll be talking about in Q&A today. And then it's the 2029 intense period of assessment, which will start as soon in the year as the apparatus can get the outputs and the various documentation to the sub-panelists. And that's the year when you really need to kind of button up and be ready to work extremely intensely. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it is also incredibly rewarding. I mean, I would say that, wouldn't I? But because I've done it several times, and it's not like being hit over the head with a hammer. You do come out of a ref process with a real sense of what the discipline looks like nationally and what it's looked like over the past 6 or 7 years. I came away each time with a real respect and pride in the excellence of the research work and the impact work and the way English literature and language departments are run across the country. So I'm sure you will feel the same, whatever discipline you choose to apply for. It's a unique opportunity to come up close and personal with the entire discipline, and to see things that you normally wouldn't see when you're just looking at a very narrow cross section of things. Am I doing this one? I am doing this one. Okay, so I mean there are the three elements which I'm sure you're familiar with. The submission will fall into these three parts with different weighting. This time round, what used to be called environment is now people, culture and environment, and is the subject of an ongoing pilot study. So we're not wholly sure yet what will be in it, but it will be assessing the kind of general culture of research in departments, the way that colleagues are supported, the way that research is promoted and funded and looked after in units. Then there's a contribution to knowledge and understanding, which is the expanded version of outputs, broadly defined, hopefully with a wider range of outputs than ever before. And we're trying to encourage the submission of the kinds of things that ref managers in universities might have looked a bit askance at and said, are you sure they'll like that? I mean, the answer this time around is yes, they will. We will welcome interpretive dance based on bridge building, that kind of thing. We'll try it, why not? And we get to see an awful lot of these things and assess them And then, of course, engagement and impact, looking at the case studies, looking at the statements of how a department, a unit works to ensure that its research is benefiting the wider community, engaging with groups beyond academia, and generally having an impact beyond itself. Have I done enough on that one, Rebecca? Yes, I have. So next slide, please. And I have no idea what it will be. It's not me. Hurrah. I will pass on. Do I pass to Simon or back to you, Rebecca?
I think I'm taking this on, Greg.
Over you go.
So, well, welcome everyone. My name is Simon Macklin. I'm the chair of the People and Diversity Advisory Panel for REF 29. And there are two advisory panels which work alongside the main panels throughout REF 29's development, delivery and assessment. The first, chaired by Alice, is RDAP, the Research Diversity Panel, which really feeds into both criteria and assessment setting phases, and really looks at developing strategies to really support what Greg was talking about the sort of equitable recognition and assessment of diverse forms of research, really building on the work of IDAP from last time round, for those of you who remember those panels, to really make sure that the broad representation of research outputs and research across the UK is represented in REF 29 as we make that shift and sort of deliver on the promise that was made of a sort of once in a generational shift to develop this. PDAP, which I chair, has a slightly different remit. It develops strategies, and it's really looking to support the recognition of the diversity of roles, careers and career stages, as well as the look at equality, diversity and inclusion throughout REF 29. So for those of you who are sitting out there sort of thinking about whether the REF is for you and whether you're eligible and all of those sorts of things, as Rebecca said, that the assessment this time round for panel members is very much based on the excellence that they have done. It doesn't look at their role, their career stages. And what we're really looking to do is to embrace all of that so that we can get as a holistic assessment of research excellence and the vibrancy of research cultures across the UK as possible. So if there is sort of anyone sitting out there thinking, am I not eligible? As we've said in the advert, many people who come from diverse backgrounds won't apply because they don't think they meet one or two criteria. So we're really here to encourage you to really think about applying and really embracing this opportunity, as Greg said, to get a fantastic understanding of your discipline, your disciplinary area across the UK and its research. It is a fantastic opportunity for those who've done it before, but for those who haven't done it before, also I can highly recommend the opportunity to really understand how research in your discipline exists across the country and make lots of interesting observations. So what are we looking for? In terms of the next stages, the main panel chairs will decide on the final balance of roles within the main panels, but it is anticipated that each main panel will comprise the main panel chair, for which those have been appointed, and that person provides the overall leadership for the main panel and its sub-panels, guiding the development of the criteria and then ensuring consistent assessment standards across all of the units of assessment within their main panel area, as well as the tricky matter of overseeing the timely delivery of REF 29, which for anyone who's been involved in large-scale assessment exercises is not always the easiest thing. The chair, and Greg being here sort of shows that, also plays that sort of key ambassadorial role in engaging throughout the sector, and we'll see more and more of that as we go forward. Then there are sub-panel chairs for each of the UOAs, and they contribute their unit of assessment expertise and experiences to that, and it forms quite a close-knit community. Again, those have closed, and shortlisting and appointments will be done in due course. And then there's a series of specialist experts for main panels. So there's the international experts, and these members have experience of leading research in at least one other country outside the UK, and they ensure the assessment criteria reflects that international standards, that benchmark of international standards that's listed in the REF criteria. Then we have people, culture and environment experts, and these members have experience of leading and delivering initiatives that create the positive cultures and supportive environments that are inclusive of roles and career stages. And then experts in the use, application and wider benefit of research. And so those were the impact assessors from last time, but this is broader this time. Remember, it's about engagement and impact, not just about impact. And these members have experience of using research in the private, public or third sectors, and they ensure the sort of fair assessment of research impact and engagement. And finally, interdisciplinary experts, and these members have experience of leading and using interdisciplinary research, and they ensure the fair assessment of interdisciplinary research and work closely with other panels to maintain consistency across the REF. And then really what we're here to sort of talk about today, sub-panel and sub-panel membership. So there will be a process for chair and deputy chair, as Rebecca and Greg have already said, and that's where we are at the moment. But here today, we're here to talk to members and really encourage people to apply. And these people are just practicing researchers with a breadth of research expertise. It's agnostic to role, career stages. This is about being an expert, and looking at commissioning, applying, making use of research is also really, really important, as well as other experts concerning, impact, engagement, or people, culture and environment. Wherever you're coming from, we're really looking to embrace that. So it's anticipated that the following roles will be recruited for the assessment phase. So there'll be a later recruitment exercise as well, and that will be looking at assessors for CKU, or contributions to knowledge and understanding, and that's really assessing the research outputs, assessors of engagement and impact, and assessors of people, culture and environment. And that will come as the research panels develop the panel criteria. So if we then move on, we're going to have a look at the application and the application process. So the form is split into 4 sections for each role. And I've just got a few thoughts here on how to tackle them. But, please, there is the Q&A is open and all of those sorts of things, and we can move that forward. So in the first one, we want to know about your knowledge and understanding that is relevant to the role. We want to hear about how your knowledge and understanding is leading in one of these fields within the UOA. We don't really want to hear just a list of every type of output that you've produced. What we want to know is how you are within the discipline. 1 or 2 key sub-points of key expertise is really what we're looking for in that, because it enables us to assess the roles, as well as put all of those sorts of bits and pieces together, and don't ignore the sort of second bit. We need to know that you have this, and you're not just quoting from ref publications. We want to know that you really understand the relevance to the role for research assessment. So then your experience relevant to the role. So, it's really, again, important just to have a real think about what is it that you have. Tell us about your experience of influencing or leading others, or choosing really 1 or 2 elements and telling us about what your experience has taught you that you will bring to this role. That sort of reflective element is really helpful when we come to look at the mix of roles to put onto a panel. You're telling us how you've done it, or it could be, what's there, or how it was fitted within your role anyway. Then thirdly, how your skills are relevant. Again, try not just to list a bullet point. Really think about the role. Think about what skills you've developed either inside your role or outside your role, or in other areas that could really benefit the panel. When did you do this? What did you achieve? What did you learn from this is also really, really important. And what approach would you take into the panel now that you know this? It's it'd be wonderful to hear as well about what you anticipate learning along the way if you're new to a panel. This isn't just about having it all. This is about making sure that the panel is well drafted together, and it is a learning process, and it's an opportunity to really develop it. And then finally, your motivation for applying for the role. We really want to hear what you gain, what you're looking to get out of this, why you and the role are a really good match, across what you're looking at within that. So then if we just move on slightly. So we have a couple of elements. I think, Greg, you're going to start this, and then I think I'll do a couple, and then Rebecca, you'll do a couple as well.
Yep, thanks very much, Simon. I think Simon has covered some of this in broad brush. I'll just put a bit of kind of sub-panel experience detail on it. I mean, I do think that the crucial thing is to be specific about your expertise and to give evidence for it, to support the claim that you are able to do this by showing us that you've done it. So tell us what your experience is. When a sub-panel chair gets together with the deputies to try and create the first phase criteria setting sub-panel, still more when they try then to expand that to the full panel for the assessment, they're going to have a few pragmatic tasks ahead of them, one of which is to ensure that they've got sufficient expertise to cover the full range of work that they will receive as part of that discipline or group of disciplines. It's part of inclusiveness that we've got to have a sub-panel that can realistically assess everything that might come in within that discipline. So they're going to have X number of chairs that they can fill with people, and that X number of chairs has got to cover the whole discipline, which could, and I'll speak to English because it's the one I know best, cover everything from really quite technologically rooted linguistics through to creative work, from literature of all kinds through to playwriting. So you need people there that can do that. So if you can assess something, if you're experienced in a field, please list that, because it will help the chair to decide, oh, well, this person can do 18th century literature, but they can also do creative writing. They've also got some skill in linguistics. So list the things you can do and give a bit of evidence to prove that you can. That would be useful. So be specific. It's not just I do literature or engineering or chemistry. What kind and what range can you do? Don't be extravagant, but don't be overly modest either. The more detail you can give, the easier it will be for the chair to say, okay, yeah, we can cover Chomskyan and non-Chomskyan linguistics with this one person because they span the field or whatever. So that's number one, and I can say more about that again in Q&A if you like. Make your application easy to grade. Make it clear what your experience is. As Simon was saying, we're not just looking for people who've done this before. The ideal sub-panel is an amalgam of people who know what they're doing, who can show other people the ropes, and new people who bring new things and can reflect the work on the ground. So don't not put in if you haven't done it before. You list the kinds of assessment you have done. List peer reviewing for journals or working for the HRC or another research council or something like that. It's all useful, and whatever you say, give some evidence to support it. That makes it easy. Everyone will say they're wonderful and they're very committed to the values of REF. A little bit of detail onto how you've demonstrated that enables the sub-panel chair to just say, yep, that's clear, they've done that, they've got experience. I think that's all I'll say on numbers 1 and 2. So I will pass over to whoever's doing number 3, which may be Simon again.
Well, yeah, I'll do 3 and 4. So as I've said, it's really explaining why it is relevant. And I think, from having reviewed a number of applications for different things as part of the REF process, as has Rebecca and Greg, sometimes people just list their roles. That's not really what we're looking for. It's about saying, why is it relevant? Just to pick up a couple of things I know that people are asking in the Q&A from this, about where, you might put diverse lived experiences or things like that. This is about you choosing that section. Is your diverse lived experience, is that something you want to bring from a knowledge and understanding perspective? So really thinking about people and culture. Is it something that you want to bring to your skill set? Is it something that you want to, bring to your motivation for doing the role? So there's no one place to discuss your diverse lived experiences on the application form. It's about you really thinking about what does that mean for you and why is it relevant to your application in the role? Are you bringing that for a particular purpose? Or, for you, or it could be all of the above in that sort of sense. And I think it's that sense of making it relevant to moving forward. Number 4 is an interesting one. You know, it is a strict process. There are applications for this. So when we read applications, some people just write one thing and expect us to make a huge leap in terms of understanding their knowledge and understanding of the area, or their skills in terms of developing that. And that, you know, in order to make sure that this is as fair a robust process as we can't extrapolate. You know, there are a lot of elements within that. As we sort of move forward. And it's about being that sort of relevance and strictly telling us. And that's why we suggest, you know, you choose 1 or 2 examples. You're not telling us everything in that, but you're diving a little bit deeper into that. There are some other questions there, you know, around roles. So I'll just pick that up here because it is important about why is it relevant. Applications for subpanel are open to all role, technical, research management, all of those across the disciplines. This is about saying, why is this relevant to the job of doing what you need to do as a panel member? You know, and all of those roles are very relevant. So from my perspective, from both PDAP and RDAP, we have members who are research managers, we have members who are technicians, and that has been a deliberate shift for F29. So I would encourage definitely anyone out there who is representing a non-academic community, library or something else, to really think hard. It can to apply, because I think this will be a really great opportunity for us to shift research assessment and the inclusivity of research assessment to all of those who contribute to the diverse research and vibrancy of the UK research landscape. So yeah, everybody is eligible within that. So Rebecca, do you want to take 5 and 6?
Yep, thanks very much, Greg. 5 is a really important one for me. As you've said, we've done a lot of shortlisting already for this exercise, and my more detailed point on this links to what you've been saying, Simon, about explaining and a strict process, and what Greg had said before as well around making your application easy to grade. So essentially, assume that whoever is reading your application is reading hundreds of applications. You really need to make it easy for them to see how you are answering the question directly. So in this, I guess the best way to think about it is, don't copy and paste your CV into the answer text. You might have a beautiful CV, but what we want to know is how your experience and skills actually relate to the question set in the application form. So take a bit of time to actually directly answer the questions. And remember that part of what we're looking at here isn't just the list of experiences you have, but it's how you communicate that. So if you've got a short amount of space to explain to us what you're doing, the way that you explain that and the way you make it easy for us to grade that really does demonstrate to us that when you're in a situation on a panel with diverse voices, different perspectives, you will be able to get your point across clearly and quickly to others. Similarly with skills, if the question's relating to the skills relevant to your role, please don't just list the skills you've got. As Greg and Simon have said, give us a little bit of an example so that we can understand what you've learned from those skills and which skills are actually relevant to the role. That helps us to see how you imagine this role will be and what your position will be in delivering it. And I guess that links us on to the sixth point on the slide here. I just want to remind you that we are recruiting people, and we know that you as people have personalities, and we're delighted to read that in the applications. Explain how your research meets the knowledge and understanding that we need. That's brilliant. We want to see that. But we also want to see how that has shaped your thinking beyond just the experience that you've had, but into the area that you work in more broadly. And then if you can outline that to connect directly to what we're looking for in REF, that's even better. So what we want to see is how your experience relates to supporting or working with or shaping others or disciplines or processes, so that we can see as others have said, the role that you've had, the way your experience has moved over time, who you are as a person, what you bring. So you could write, I've been a PhD supervisor, but you could also write what you've learned from that, the experiences you've taken from it, and how those learnings will feed into shaping what you would be like as a panel member for REF 2029. I anticipate we're going to come back to this in the Q&A, so I'm going to move quickly on to the more, I don't know, awkward point on payment, the technical details. So very quickly, we want to highlight here that panel members will receive fees directly, although you can opt for the fee to be paid to your institution. All members are eligible for fees, with the exception of individuals who are working for organisations that are fully funded by the government. I don't think I need to go into any more detail on this. It is on our website. And then Sylvie and Olivier, do you want to come into questions now? These are the other opportunities for engaging with sessions on applications. Friday we have NCCPE looking specifically at PCE and impact and engagement. We've got a Welsh session from Medder this afternoon. Shall we move straight into Q&A?
That would be great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. And do you want me to stop screen sharing?
Yeah, that would be great to see all your faces. Thank you. Okay, so the first question is about early career researchers. We've got the wording leading experts in their respective disciplines on the website. And does that mean, is there a sense that those leading experts could include early career researchers?
Shall I kick off, since I'm unmuted still? Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that what we're bringing is a range of voices into our assessments. So, of course, we're looking for leading experts who might be in academia, they might be outside of academia, but we're keen also to have voices from early career researchers, from people who are bringing experience from outside of the traditional academic track in. So I think we struggle a little bit with the phrase early career researchers because it can mean a lot of different things. It's not necessarily about age, but we want to bring different approaches and experiences and ways of viewing things into our assessments.
Thank you. We've had a few questions in about the time commitment. One person's asked about whether it is realistic for a part-time academic to apply, and others asking whether the 40 to 60 days is enough time to work on the panel, and how much time should they be asking for from their institutions, and what kind of relief from duties would you recommend asking for from your employer?
Shall I kick off?
Oh, yeah.
Shall I kick off with just how we reached the 40 to 60, and then we can take it from there. There's a lot embedded in that question set. So the 40 to 60 days comes from our evaluation of the last exercise, and as Greg pointed out, there's a lot that can be hidden in 40 to 60 as an average, and we'll be looking carefully at that. The reality is, until we've had the submissions to the intentions to submit, survey in 2027, until we've been able to process that, we just don't know the size and the shape of submissions. So we don't know quite how big the assessment panels need to be, and we don't know quite what the shape of the outputs will be. So we are working in a, based on last time, we're assuming about this amount of time just now. I'll hand over to the other two. Sylvie, if their brains are like mine, they might need a reminder of what the detail of the question was.
I think the only bit we haven't covered there is about part-time staff, and if we can support them on REF panels.
So we're definitely looking for a wide diversity of people from a lot of different things, and there are other questions around people on fixed-term contracts or all of those sorts of things. So what definitely we're looking for, is it realistic, has a lot to do with where you see this fitting within your role. As Greg said, you know, it is important that sometimes you consider whether your institution is, you know, really supportive of this. It is a time commitment to do this. If you're on a fixed term contract and you don't necessarily know where you'll be going forward, that's still okay. I mean, the ref panel membership can go across a number of different roles, and as Rebecca sort of started out, we are very alive as well to where the sector is, and we understand that these changes might mean that people can't continue. We hope, obviously, that all appointed members will continue right throughout the process, but we also understand that that is not the case. So can we make adjustments for certain things? Absolutely, as well. You know, there are a number of other questions in there about reasonable adjustments, and you know, this is a public process, and it is incredibly important to us that researchers from across the disciplines, as well as researchers with disabilities, are able to access this and participate fully. That being said, I think we're also really keen to hear from people with certain skill sets that sort of fit within that. So if anyone is out there who can assess outputs in BSL, now that it is a new official language for 2029, I think we would be delighted to hear. And again, it's a skill set that is really important. So rather than seeing it just as an adjustment, you know, this is also a process where put that in your skill set, as there's lots of other skill sets within that and within people with disabilities that will enable the panels to do their job better. So I think, you know, from my perspective, this is also about encouraging you to make the most of that and really think through what that brings to your ability to participate in the panel on a positive side as well. And I'm sure the main panel chairs will be delighted to hear all of that.
Thank you, Simon. That's really helpful. We've got, I think, a bit of confusion about the impact assessors and how the recruitment works for that, and whether that's open now or it opens later, or if you were to apply now, knowing that you only want to do it during the assessment phase, can you defer your application? Should you wait? Will it definitely open again?
That's one for you, Rebecca, I think.
Okay, yep. So the first phase of what we're doing now is setting the criteria for the exercise, and it's really important that we've got a range of voices to help us do that. 50% of the assessment scores for this exercise is contribution to knowledge and understanding, or outputs as previously known. 50% isn't, and so we need to make sure that we're not just bringing people in who are experts in creating and communicating research. We also need people who have expertise in understanding the research environment, people and culture element of the exercise, and impact engagement too. So we need these voices to make sure that what we're doing is setting the criteria for the exercise, drawing on these expertise and experiences. The panels will grow. So there's reasonably small panels, relatively speaking, at the outset. They will grow when we know the size of the assessment that needs to happen and the shape of that assessment. And so there will be another opportunity at some point, I would say in 2027, as we need to grow because we've got a strong sense of the shape of the submissions for each of the units of assessment. But if you are an expert in impact and engagement, as the question just now is, yes, please do apply to be involved now. I personally would advise against applying now to be picked up later, because your experience and skill set are likely to transform enormously over the next 2 years. And so if you were to apply now to be held later, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. So there will be an opportunity later in the exercise. From your experience, Greg, would you like to pick up on how that works in practice in the panels?
When you say that, which do you mean?
The two different phases where there's a smaller panel at the beginning and then it grows.
Yeah, I mean, the criteria setting is going to cover all the elements of REF. So there'll have to be representatives who can speak to and champion those elements in that assessment, in that criteria setting version of the subpanel. So yes, we're looking for people who will be able to talk to public engagement, impact engagement, and also the PCE elements, alongside people who can represent the different kinds of research that subpanel will embrace and the needs that they have, because we've got to make sure that the criteria document as it goes out reflects and doesn't deter submissions or an understanding of research that's important to the discipline. So we've got to have a lot of voices and a lot of experience around the table. When it comes to the assessment, it is much more pragmatic. The criteria are there and we're judging the submissions against them. And, again, I've got to be honest, it's always a trade-off and a negotiation with resources that the ref team can allocate. You always want at least 2 more members than they'll let you have. So you're always, to some extent, overstretched. That's the nature of all assessment work. It's the nature of all work, I suspect. You haven't got quite the resource you need. So you're always trying to get more. There's been some questions about how that shakes out in terms of, do we get more money if there's more work? I mean, I think the answer can't be yes. It must be that the ref team tries to balance the size of the units with the amount of work, so that roughly the amount of work is commensurate with the fee that you pick up for that. So yes, what else am I going to say? I've forgotten the first part of the question. Yeah, I mean, sorry. In terms of reasonable adjustments and who can put in, and we did all the things that Rebecca and Simon have spoken about. But there's also that pragmatic element. There is a body of material of submissions that what you have to get through. The timetable is always just a little bit too taxing to allow you to relax. So there is an onus in that negotiation with the ref team to allow the possibility of adjustments, because the timetable itself will be demanding. There are, or there always have been, milestones as you go along. Say you start in late January or early February, well, by May you should have assessed roughly 30% of the submissions, and it always looks like a mountain to climb. You always probably near enough do it, but it's not something that can be flexible, because there are deadlines for the submission of the data and for the announcement of the funding, which Rebecca can talk about. So it's a hard job. I couldn't convince you otherwise, and it would be unfair if I tried to. So it's a trade-off between the nature of the job that needs doing and the kind of people we want to attract to do it, to make sure it's done fairly and equitably and with the broadest diversity of expertise and also of experience.
So I don't know if it's worth coming to here. We had a question about how we're going to make sure that those panels are genuinely diverse and that we have got a diversity of institutions on those panels. And also, if we could cover as part of that, how big the panels are as well.
Yes, they're the size that they are. They are a piece of string. Some disciplines in main panel D, are, for various reasons, relatively small. Classics, for example, has regrettably shrunk over the years. So there are not a huge number of units of assessment putting in for that. So the panel that needs to assess it can be smaller. Whereas my own English language and literature, we had about 92 submissions from different UIAs last time round. So you have to have a bigger panel. And I think we ended up with something like 32 members for the English subpanel last time, having gone back cap in hand several times to the ref team to say, we really need another another impact assessor, etc., etc. So the panels are different sizes.
Could we also bring in Simon just to talk about the 2 advisory panels and their role in this?
Sure. Sure. Look, I mean, in terms of getting diverse institutions in diverse people, diverse roles, you know, that there is a number of questions around technicians, for example, within the Q&A as well. We welcome applications from all of these and really do encourage them. This is a change for REF 2029, and we know that it can seem like a bit of a barrier, and that's partly why we're doing webinars like this. But just talking about PDAP, for example, we have technicians, we have research managers, and we have a diverse set of institutions, and we have a diversity across the 4 nations. So look, putting panels together, as Greg will well know, is also, you know, there is an element of making sure that this is as diverse a representation of the sector as possible within the applications that come forward. And that's why I think we're here and what we're saying to you, be specific, give us those examples, because that, and don't try to help us extrapolate from that. You know, tell us what it is. You know, if you believe that skill set is because you're in an interesting department that's not really usually represented in post-92 institutions, then tell us that, and that really will help the REF team, the main panel chairs, the sub-panel chairs, put together good representative panels that hold the sectors, the sector's trust and confidence to do this, you know, this assessment exercise. And, you know, from technicians' perspective, you know, we've had technicians on all of the policy deep dives so far. So some of you sitting out there might have been some of those members as well on those policy development exercises. And that's new, and they've found that, you know, that there is things, but there is support, and we are there. And as PDAP, we are committed to working both with our technician members on PDAP, but also the wider technician community to really think about how these panels can develop and what that means for panels, whether it's around PCE, whether it's around impact and engagement, all of those sorts of things is really, really important.
Can I just say something about institutional diversity as well? I mean, I think it is something that all sub-panel chairs are going to be very mindful of, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the pragmatic thing to do, because you really can't carry the confidence of the community if you're only appearing to represent the views of one subsection of it. But also you can't speak coherently about the whole sector. I mean, I have the advantage of coming from, you know, that 93 unit of assessment English literature and language sub-panel, where we really did have representation and submissions from every kind of institution, and the results show, I think, quite conclusively, and they have ref on ref, that institution type is not always a good predictor of how well you do in ref. So you need the people round the table when we're talking about things like PCE that can challenge the assumptions that, you know, people from a well-funded institution will kind of, without thinking about, you know, oh, the important thing to say is regular research leave. And then you'll have someone who will say, well, what if your institution can't afford that and it has to be competitive? And you try and come up with criteria that reflect those, the diversity and the complexity of the sector. So yes, I mean, we do try always to go beyond the kind of obvious Russell Group, Golden Triangle, whatever you think the predictable institutions are for that particular discipline, because you have to reflect and assess and speak for the broad diversity of a discipline across the countries.
We've had a few questions on the mechanics of applying across several disciplines, where people whose experience could overlap more than one. Exactly how should they do that on the application? And a related question about how we're involving the learned societies and sector bodies, if we're doing that differently this time around.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sylvie. We can talk live to this because we're right in the process just now of shortlisting our sub-panel chair applicants just now. We are working with the sector bodies to shortlist sub-panel chair applicants and deputies. We've broken the process into the 2 parts. One deadline has passed. They're also highlighting to us what are the key points from the disciplines that they represent that need to be considered for each of the units of assessment. So we're clear in that as we're making the shortlisting decisions. For those who are interested and have skills that could apply across different units of assessment and indeed the main panel questions, I can see, and happens to be in front of this question from 20 minutes ago around librarians, for example. Having either a skill set that could specifically hit a number of opportunities or is general and therefore could sit across many. Take a look at the different opportunities that are outlined on the website and in the form itself, and tick the boxes that feel comfortable for you to apply to. Then when you're filling in the answers, make sure that you're hitting the different points. So of course, if you apply saying that you are an academic who could cover 18 of the units of assessment, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to make a strong case for any of those. But if, for example, you're a librarian, which I think is the example, you can make a really strong case, for example, for a few units of assessment where this will be really important. And if you're ticking the box for main panel as well as the unit of assessment panels, that demonstrates, means you'll be factored into consideration for all of those different pieces. How it will work in the end is that the sub-panel chair, in consultation with the main panel chair, with the REF team at various points and with sector bodies as needed, will have a careful thought about the shape that's needed for the overall sub-panel, the different skills that are needed, particularly bearing in mind the skills that the sub-panel chair and their deputies have. And then from that, they'll build out with the different people, I think, as Greg said right at the beginning, of how to make a great application. Make it really clear what your expertise are, and then that can be built into the picture and the shape of the overall panel. We anticipate that there might be some gentle negotiation between sub-panel chairs and main panel chairs around some of the skill sets, for example, as Catherine has demonstrated, that would be incredibly valuable everywhere. So I wouldn't see this as potentially talking yourself out of a role because you could do more than one. It just leaves us with negotiations around where you might sit if there's only a few of you that put yourself forward from those backgrounds.
That's useful, because a lot of people have asked whether they could sit on a main or a sub panel, on what the difference between that kind of work is. And I think we might have to make that the last question. Thank you.
Want me to have a go at that? Okay. Yes, I mean, the main panel is there to, first and foremost, I think, ensure parity and equality among the various disciplines, to monitor, to advise, and to help out. It does some calibration, it does some moderation. You will go and look at the work of the various sub-panels under the main panel, and you may be asked to assess some things and do some calibration with them. So whereas the sub-panels themselves are doing the bulk of the assessment. So some of the roles are more appropriate to main panel and some to sub-panel. It's not primarily an assessment role. You won't be getting boxes of outputs delivered on a regular basis if you're on the main panel, unless you've been asked to help out, which often you are if a sub-panel is in trouble and can't manage to persuade Rebecca to give them an extra 2 assessors. Some relevant main panel members may, out of the kindness of their hearts, choose to help out with some impact case studies, assessment or output. But primarily it's about ensuring fairness and looking across the piece to see that one sub-panel isn't using the criteria very, very differently to another, and oddnesses of result don't result. And one of the questions I noticed was about interdisciplinarity, and that's always a rather complex question. Which interdisciplines do I have to be an interdisciplinary assessor is not the way to look at it. I mean, on the main panel in particular, and I guess on the sub-panels too, the role is really to ensure that work which is broadly interdisciplinary and falls into a number of different disciplinary fields is being assessed as well as it can be and as fairly as those which are squarely within a single discipline. So you don't actually have to be an expert in all disciplines in order to be the champion. That's why we use the word champion as well as expert. You need to be able to say, well, are we looking at this output differently to others because it's in a different format? Are we being purely neutral in looking at something on its quality rather than where it's come from? Is it being disadvantaged because it's it's about engineering and Wordsworth, for instance, which is always my favorite example. Don't worry. I mean, the process is to get a Wordsworth specialist and an engineer to look at it and see what they think of it together. And one will say it's hopeless and one will say it's brilliant. And then you reconcile that. But the champion on the main panel and the sub-panels is really there to say, look, I think we need to be a bit more attentive to this kind of submission or this kind of output. Simon, do you have something to help with that?
I'm not sure what more. I mean, I think I think in terms of, I mean, particularly the interdisciplinary, I mean, I think across all of this is about making sure that at main panel level, it's about ensuring across the unit of assessments and then across the main panels that there is parity. And then at the lower stage, it's about assessment. And actually, sometimes people start in one and move to the other over ref cycles and then vice versa the other way. So I think it's important to consider where's the best application you can make for the use of your skills. And I think that that's the key driver behind all of this is we want your skills. You've really, diving down thinking, well, where's best? Which of these roles really is alive in my mind to my skills, my current expertise, knowledge, understanding, whether it's in PCE, impact assessment, etc., etc. So we just move that forward slightly in terms of thinking about where you would be excited to join the panel and participate as well, because we know that this is a big exercise, but it is also hopefully an exercise that will really add to your enjoyment of the sector and your role. And I know from previous exercises and previous assessment exercises, whether it was RefTEF, whatever, it really does encourage you to really think about the sector and participate and meet other people and network. And while it's hard work, as Greg said, it's an incredibly enjoyable exercise in that sort of sense as we move forward. And hopefully you can think about this would make it the most enjoyable exercise for me. Hopefully that helps, Greg.
Thank you very much, Greg and Simon, for joining us today. Thank you to Sylvie and Olivier for all of your organisation behind the scenes and your curation of questions. Thank you to everyone for joining today. We intend to have the recording of this up on the website later today. Sylvie and Olivier are going to continue working through the questions. We're going to make sure that the questions are answered on the website. I'm planning to write a blog later this week, which will pick up some of the main points too. As we said, there is a session this afternoon that MEDA is running for applicants coming from Welsh institutions. On Friday, the National Centre for PPE Public Engagement, NCCPE, National Centre for the Coordination of Public Engagement, got there, is running a session on Friday, which we've been feeding into too. So for those of you who are looking at it from more of a PCE or impact perspective, especially, there might be some useful points there. The very final point I want to make is I noticed in the questions there was something about, can we publish the criteria that we're using to assess applications? I want to make it clear that these are on the website. So where we've asked a question, your experience relevant to the role, there are bullet points under that question. It's your ability to answer those questions that we are grading in our work through the applications. So it is there, it's all clear, there's nothing else that we're hiding. We want to see the answers to your questions. If you don't answer the question, then we can't really grade it, and that will not do you well in the scoring perspective. If you answer the questions that we ask in the bullet points, that will fare you well. Thanks everyone, sorry for overrunning. Really looking forward to receiving your applications and to working with you over the next few years. Have I missed anything, Sylvie, Greg, Simon, Olivier? Nope. Okay, then enjoy the rest of your days.